Well, what you were saying about school, the community, kind of is a segue into just another question I had about this idea of school as family and the dynamic of pitching in to help. I know you mentioned like if somebody gets cancer, food drives. Are there any other examples that stood out to you of what that looks like, the idea of school as family?
Yeah, and I think that this kind of goes along with how teachers and administrators can also create sort of sense of belonging. Um, Sometimes I think it's intentional, sometimes I don't. But the bottom line is, it's because the communities tend to be relatively small. There is a very uh, clear trend of students who have noted having and seeing their teachers involved in lots of other aspects of their lives. For example, church.
Mm-hmm.
They go to church, they see their teacher or their principal, and because it's a smaller community, many of the students there go to the same churches or the same church. There might be other outside activities. Also, there's a sort of intergenerational aspect to rural communities where often there are lots of several teachers on staff who themselves went to or attended that particular school.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes administrators too. And so often you'll have a teacher who's been in that community their whole lives, and they know their students' parents and maybe even their parents. So as a result, there's all this, intertwined sort of dynamic and relationships. And so I think for many students and teachers there, it does, for those reasons, does feel like a big sort of family. People know each other, they know their pasts, their reputations, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. But I think all those things add up to this feeling that it's really one big family.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And how, I actually had that question, does that make it difficult for kids and adults if they make mistakes to kind of start afresh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Maine, and I grew up a couple streets away from Stephen King, the horror author.
Yeah.
And Stephen King, I bring this up because he used to write a lot, or has written a lot, about the dark sides of growing up in a sort of rural community. And one of those dark sides, I think, is the fact that it's really tough for you or your family to escape a certain reputation. And, I mean, part of that's just human nature, but because it's a small community, it's hard to, as you said, start with like a blank slate. And so I've talked to some students that really, even in the middle school years or early high school years, that certainly felt that. But I also think you have a lot of educated adults in these buildings who recognize that and try to usurp that in some way and alleviate the stress that can come with those kinds of reputations. So it's probably a mix. But I think you see it there a little more than you might in other schools because you have so many teachers and administrators who've been there their whole lives and whose families they know. So that can make it a little difficult.
Yeah. Is there a positive bent to that in terms of, do you think like wanting to make good choices because you and your family are known?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a lot of positive to it. You might be more willing to go out on a limb and put in extra time with a student because you know their family.
Mm-hmm.
You might have more context and sympathy or empathy for what they're going through because you know their family. And and certainly, yeah, you might have some students that really want to live up to good high expectations because they think their family's reputation or their reputation's on the line.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I shouldn't have just focused on the negative. I do think there are a lot of positives for that too. But I think that can be, tough for students if it's the other way around and they have a reputation for being, if their older brothers were troublemakers and their father was a troublemaker or mother, and then they're coming in as an average student, they might have that, following them around.
Yeah.